Infinite bobbleheads. Today I'm here to give a brief overview of one of my favorite decks of all time. It is Orvar the Allform, but not really. He's just kind of here because he does awesome stuff to these 6 cards. These are bobbleheads. They are from Fallout. And if you notice, there are 7. 7 cards is what I mean. All of these cards are fantastic because what they say is, based on the number of bobbleheads you have, they do something cool. They draw you cards, they make you guys, they pump your guys, or in the case of my favorite card, the luck bobblehead. The luck bobblehead says you roll a bunch of dice, and if you win those dice rolls in the perfect amount, which is the case of 7 times, you win the game. Now, that's a crazy likelihood to get all the bobbleheads out and place them down and then roll them and win the game. That's why we need Orvar's help. And Orvar says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more permanents you control, create a token that's a copy of those permanents. So Orvar doesn't really care what you do as long as you target something. This is the sheer pile of cards I have in the deck, and here's one for comparison, that actually say target a thing. So I'd like to read you my favorite card of them all. Artificial Evolution. Change the text of target spell or permanent by replacing all instances of one creature type with another. The new creature type can't be legend or wall. Notice that it says spell or permanent. It doesn't really matter if you use this to actually change a creature type. There's another one, Glamour Die. Change the text of a spell or permanent by replacing all instances of one color with another. There are cards in here that make cards blue, that make them colorless. It's very funny. But all that matters is we're paying 1 or 2 mana to copy a permanent, and that can get out of hand. So let's talk about some of my favorite permanents to copy, other than the bobbleheads. Yes, making a billion bobbleheads is very fun. You want to make the luck one. You want to roll a bunch of dice. You want to win the game. Sometimes you also have to not die and survive in order to be in the game long enough to play the bobbleheads. So I want to highlight 3 very important cards: Propaganda, Misleading Signpost, and the Mirage Mirror. These 3 all-stars in the deck help me out of pretty much any problem I can think of. Propaganda, copy it a bunch of times. They have to pay like 6, 8, 10 mana to attack. Misleading Signpost, copy it and declare attackers. Oops, their big dragon is attacking someone else, not me. And Mirage Mirror, oh, chef's kiss. It can copy your opponent's things as well, not just your own. And then when you copy it with Orvar, you get a copy forever. This can make things like bigger blockers or even like life gain engines, those kinds of things. And the theme of this deck is use your brain, think, have fun, make this kind of work and be your own. It presents a lot of opportunities to interact with the board in really cool, unique, and goofy ways. But then sometimes you got to play some good cards that actually can win too. And so that is the good cards that can win pile. In that pile I have Urza, Lord High Artificer, Simulacrum Synthesizer, and Aetherflux Reservoir. Look, I'm not saying that every game needs to be a deterministic line where you try to win, but if you start copying Aetherflux Reservoirs, your opponents are going to see this coming. You gain a billion life, and eventually you just laser beam them all out. Or same thing with Simulacrum Synthesizers or even Urza. Yeah, you don't get to keep the copy of Urza because he's legendary, but you do get to keep the constructs when those 2 things come in. You can start to assemble a pretty big army. One of my favorite things about Orvar is that he is a Changeling. And what that means is you can play any cards that care about typing because you have the typing. So I've laid out a few lands here that I really like. Trenzalore Clock Tower, yeah, it's a crock of poop. Riptide Laboratory, Swarm Yard, and Tyrite Sanctum. Tyrite Sanctum. All 4 of these cards say you need a particular creature type. Time Lord, Wizard, Insect, Rat, Spider, Squirrel, God, and even more Accursed Dunelands, I think, that came out in Aether Drift. Orvar is all these things, so he gains the benefit of these lands. On top of that, only the legendary land is excluded from this, but the other ones you can copy with Orvar, so you can actually ramp on top of protecting him. I gotta give a shout out to my boy Maze of Ith. There have been plenty of games where I've seen a couple of big beaters coming. They have protection from black and blue and all this stuff. Doesn't matter. I have a land. I copied 1,000,000 times. I keep myself safe. This whole deck is such a fun experiment in what am I going to draw and what am I going to do. If you do not have card draw, you are not going anywhere. So permanent-based card draw is important, but it is very possible to accidentally draw yourself out. Maybe put in a lab man. I didn't because I think it was too easy to win that way. Archmage Emeritus, Mystic Remora, Ristic Study, and Case of the Ransacked Labs. Some of these cards are good because they allow you to draw on your opponent's plays. A lot of times your opponents are going off and you need the help early. And some of them are good because they draw when you cast stuff. Be very careful copying like Case of the Ransacked Lab, because once you solve it, it doesn't say may. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. I have run through my whole library. And all of these side supporting pieces are leading up to the how do we copy many, many times in a turn? Because yes, I do have a lot of these one drops, but eventually you're going to run out of spells, right? Nuh-uh. You see, with the help of a surprise tool, Sapphire Medallion, we can reduce the cost of our spells quite a bit. Copy a few of these bad boys. Next thing you know, you're only paying the blue or the colored mana cost. There are two wonderful spells in Magic, Mind Games and Clock Spinning. Both of these are 1 blue, and they either tap or untap a thing. There's some other effects with time counters. Don't worry about it. What's important is that they have buyback, and the buyback cost is usually prohibitive. In the case of Mind Games, it's 2 and a blue, plus the original blue, and in the case of Clock Spinning, it's 3 extra generic. But the way costing works in Magic is, you assign all the costs for a spell before you assign all the reductions for a spell. So if I was casting Clock Spinning for its buyback, that would be 3 generic and a blue. If I have 3 Sapphire Medallions, or if I have 3 Case of the Ransacked Labs, or 3 Thunderclap Drakes, anything that reduces the cost down by 3, Clock Spinning only costs 1 blue. Let's say that I was going to need 1 blue for something. What would it be? Copying a Bobblehead, all of the Bobbleheads tap for a blue. So by paying a blue, you can copy a Bobblehead. You fully buy back the spell. You can pay a blue, you can copy a Bobblehead. And no, it doesn't instantly win you the game right there. You need a little more juice, but you can functionally untap with an indeterminate amount of Bobbleheads. Now, technically, because of the way the Bobblehead works, you would not actually have the win on board, although deterministically at some point you would. Usually when I get to this point and I have an infinite number of luck Bobbleheads my opponents just scoop, I can't say I blame them. You get a dice roller out on a phone, you go to a website, you click through all the dice a bajillion times. That's not something that everyone should sit through. I kind of shoot for like 10 or 15 of them, and then I just like roll the dice myself. I'm having fun. But I think it's very easy to just win at that point. So Orvar is fantastic for all the reasons I mentioned, but there are some really fun surprises that I like to play in this particular listing. I've got to give it a shout out to Fumble. Fumble is 2 mana, basically bounce a creature. Okay, a fine rate. But all auras and equipment that were attached to it go to another creature, which is amazing. So you can really blow out some Voltron players with that. Finally, I want to talk about Masterful Replication. This instant of a 6 mana variety, so pretty hefty, says choose one, make some golems, yawn, or choose an artifact you control. Each other artifact you control becomes a copy of that artifact until end of turn. If you've been spending your time making Sapphire Medallions, if you've been spending your time making treasure tokens, or you've just been making constructs, doesn't matter. All of those become a Bobblehead until end of turn. There are some fantastic tricks and tricks you can do with that. If you want to go for a more classic Chase or Labman, you can replicate the draw Bobblehead, draw your whole library. You can replicate the Strength Bobblehead, pump the heck out of your creatures. There is so much variety to do in this deck. I absolutely love it. Lastly, I'll say this is definitely not the best way to play Bobbleheads. There are other versions out there. Will comes to mind, but also maybe Brutaclad, where you can go with some more like creature-based strategies and Intruder Alarm. I think there are plenty of awesome ways to play. But this is my Orvar listing. I love this guy. Thanks so much for tuning in, and let me know if you have questions in the comments. Bye. Domain expansion. Bobbleheads.